Hello, everyone. Today, I'm really excited to have Professor Anirban Mukhopadhyay. Anirban is not only a respected professor of marketing at Best Business School, but also his editorial contributions are vast, having served as editor-in-chief, co-editor, and area editor of the Journal of Consumer Psychology, and on the editorial review boards of some other respected journals, such as Journal of Consumer Research and International Journal of Research in Marketing. He's an award-winning scholar, and his research delves into consumers' beliefs, emotions, and self-regulatory decisions. But most importantly, for me, as one of his colleagues, actually, I think beyond his impressive academic and professional accomplishments, Anirban is, like I said, for me at least, renowned for his exceptional sense of humor. He's an amazing colleague to spend time with, and he always brings a unique and engaging perspective to serious world of marketing. So join us as we explore the fascinating intersection of marketing and decision making with one of the most insightful minds in the field. Welcome, Anirban.
Thank you so much, Yusuf. That was so kind. Such a lovely introduction. I'm so happy to be here and excited for our conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I invited Anirban especially. He has so many research, and all of them are really interesting. I would definitely recommend you to check his profile, scholar profile, and look at the papers. But today, especially, I wanted him to talk about one specific article that he conducted with some other co-authors on the social customer journey and traveling companions. I think it is super interesting. So that's why I will start with my first question. Anirban, can you please tell us a bit more about the research that you conducted on the social customer journey and traveling companions?
Sure. Thanks, Yusuf. So this is actually a slightly non-typical kind of paper because it is possibly my only paper which started off being invited. But then it went through a very, very rigorous review process as well. And I think that really improved it. So the backstory is there was a conference called the MSI, Marketing Science Institute Scholars Conference. The Marketing Science Institute is a leading institute that brings together industry and academia. It's based in Boston in the United States. And in 2018, they invited 25 marketing professors, mid-career marketing professors, to Colorado for a conference where, to get to know each other and also to figure out how we could work with MSI. And in the middle of the conference, they had this breakout session where MSI always has research priorities for a few years at a time, which they update every 2 or 3 years. And we had to choose which research priorities we were interested in. And we formed small groups to discuss those. And as we were discussing them, they broke it to us that maybe we could write a paper about the research priority. So this was kind of different because, customer journeys, also known as consumer decision-making processes, decision funnels, these are not new ideas. They have been around, since the early 19th century, or late 19th century, early 20th century for sure. AIDA, awareness, interest, decision, action, is something that we've all learned about in maybe undergraduate or graduate classrooms. And that model was actually first proposed in 1925, as I later learned. So then when we are sitting there at this conference, we were thinking, what new thing can we bring to the table here? This is almost 100 years old. And so then when we started iterating, we said, okay, one thing maybe that has been neglected is social influences. There's of course, a lot of research on social influences in marketing and consumer research. But it was surprising to us that this was going in parallel with all of the research and the consulting work that happens on decision journeys or decision processes, customer journeys. So we said, what happens if we put these together? And let's explore each stage of the decision journey with this new lens of social influence. And from there, the paper just exploded. We had so many ideas that we had to go through 4 rounds of review in the process. We got extensions on the page limit, multiple extensions actually, and then we still had a lot of ideas, as you've probably seen in the paper. We had to cram them into tables, just so that we don't have to use up space discussing them all.
No, I mean, saying that, I really love the figures and tables in the paper. For example, in that figure, you kind of summarize all the existing customer journey, the models, like some of them are linear, some of them are non-linear, and then kind of illustrate the whole, points with like little humans on it. I really like it, right? So I think from the not only a marketing academic point of view, but from the managerial point of view, it's really insightful to understand how it is different for different customers. But on that point, I think my understanding is that the social influence of travel companions are different for people, right? So, and then you introduce this concept notion of social distance and how it is kind of a spectrum. So can you elaborate a bit more about this, traveling companions and maybe social distance notions and how it is important?
Sure. Thanks, Yusuf. Actually, I'm very proud of those figures. I don't take credit for them. My friend Ryan Hamilton spent a lot of time and effort making those figures. But when I present this in class, or in executive education, I always joke that our contribution was previously the customer journey is just boxes: awareness, interest, decision. And we said, no, these are not boxes, these are humans. These are people. And I think that is an important shift of frame, that there's a person who's going through from stage to stage. And after you take that, and I will call that just insight number 0. After that 0 level insight, the first level insight from the paper is, who are the other people that this person is interacting with? And those are the little figures at the bottom that you mentioned, of the little humans. Some of them are pairs of humans. Some of them are humans walking dogs. There's even a little R2D2 Star Wars robot over there. So we're very, very happy with that part of it. The basic idea being there's a lot of interactions going on, and these are bi-directional. So it's not just that our decision maker is progressing along the journey, getting influence, but they're also giving influence. It's a bi-directional process. So that was insight number 1. And insight number 2 was, sometimes our decision maker is not progressing just alone by himself or herself. There are other people going with that person. And sometimes it is, let's say, 2 people progressing together, like, a family unit, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 people in a family unit progressing together. Sometimes it is some people progressing together for a certain part of the journey and then dropping out. Sometimes it is more than 2 people. For example, when I talk to executives, I say, you can think of a B2B context, a decision-making unit. You and your colleagues are making decisions over and over again. You have a meeting every week or every quarter or every month. It's the same group of people, and you are leading yourselves through this journey. Each one of you is a member of this unit. Each one of you is a human being, but the decision making is being done by the unit. So there's also the interactions within the unit that you need to factor in. So I think these are all very important insights, which we don't take credit for. We weren't the first to bring them out, but I think the contribution of this research was we highlighted them in that way. And then coming to your question about the social distance, again, social distance is something that has been studied for centuries. 2 people might be very close to each other. 2 people might be moderately close to each other, what's called weak ties, or 2 people might be very distant from each other. They may not even know each other. But in today's day, what's happening is, even people I don't know can influence my decision making. If I go online, I get some reviews, or I get some feedback, or they contribute to a 4.2 star rating. All of that is influence that they are putting on me. And similarly, I'm putting influence on them. And what's more, you have social norms, which earlier were very abstract, ways in which other people would influence us. But now social norms are also coming right up and personal in our faces with social media and AI and things like that. It's a lot more immediate. So, it's easy to say that people who are near to us influence us more. Yes, I'm sure that happens a lot. But there are ways in which people who are distant from us also influence us. And there may be lots of situations in which their influence on us is actually greater. And it's very important to understand all of these. And I think our paper sort of sets the stage, showing that, yeah, all of this can happen, and it's worth taking into account.
No, actually, great point. I mean, when I was reading it, I always try to also do some self reflections, especially the ones that we don't know who influences us. I really like that when you mentioned that sometimes we are consuming a product or service with others, right? So sometimes virtual others, and sometimes when I have free time, I play EAFC, the football game on PlayStation. Not only with my son, but most of the time I play with against other people online. I don't know who they are, but comparing my experience like in individual playing, I enjoy more when I play with some others, right? So we consume the same product without knowing each other, right? So actually their companionship affecting my consumption and hence decision of playing that game among all the other games. So it's actually really good
Thanks, Yusuf. That's a really great point. And there is actually many ways in which that can happen.
Mhm.
You mentioned one, right, in which you're playing a game with other people you don't know online. There's another way in which that can happen. People talk about multi-screening now.
Yeah.
So you're watching a game, but you have your phone open and you're tweeting about it or Xing about it on social media,
Yeah.
and other people's comments, you're responding to them. And we know that when you consume an experience, it becomes richer if you're consuming with other people.
100%.
Traditionally, we would do that sitting on a sofa with our family or with our friends. But now we can do it with people all over the world. So
Yeah.
that's a second layer. But there's also a third layer, which is if you think about something like Spotify. So my children listen to Spotify all the time, and they are very active listeners on Spotify, which means they choose almost every song that they want to listen to. They make their own playlists. I'm a much more passive listener. I just put it on, and then whatever the daily selection is, I just go with that. It's happening in the background.
Yeah.
But then I realized or at the end of the year, Spotify tells you you are Taylor Swift's 2000th most popular, biggest fan or something. Those numbers mean so much to my kids that they're comparing with each other, and they're posting about that on their own WhatsApp groups with their friends. Who is a bigger fan of Taylor Swift and who's a bigger fan of Harry Styles?
Yeah.
And that is also contributing to the listening experience. So all of this is very, very social, which
Mhm.
normally wouldn't happen 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah. No, 100%. I think like those are really great points. And also hearing that some of the companies, like you mentioned, Spotify, are kind of using it. Of course, they are also reading research and then doing their own research. And going on to my next question, you already mentioned that the social influence concept is out there already, and then customer purchase journeys are already out there so many years. And then some of the companies, let's say good companies who knows what they are doing in marketing, they are using it, right? So, and then you also mentioned some of the, again, popular articles, such as like one of them is the co-authored by Cialdini on like how hotel guest usage of towels are changing based on the similarity of the other hotel guests in the hotel, right? Staying in the hotel. So we know some of the concepts like credibility or liking or authority, maybe social influence in different contexts, and some of the companies are using it as well. So, and how do you think that companies should, find a sweet spot in terms of sharing the social information? Because sometimes I feel like they are doing it too much, using maybe like social influence tag, like this is the most popular product, at the same time sharing more like statistics. And at some point, maybe there is like a kind of a clutter. So do you think that there is a certain way or like amount of social information to be shared, or what do you think about it?
That's a fantastic question again. In our paper in table 3, under the information search tab, there is a bullet where it said, how do customers cope with too much social information? Which is basically, the direction that you're asking the question in. And I have a couple of responses. One is, you know, we have talked about, if you forget the word social, we've talked about for a long time, how do people cope with too much information, information overload. And we know that people have shortcuts when they cut through this thing, too much information. They probably are going to use heuristics of some sort. They will just go with some rule of thumb. Which rule of thumb a person will use at any one point in time, I don't know. But what I do know is that if there's too much information, if it's social or not, doesn't matter, they will use heuristics. So then the question comes, how do people know? And how does a brand know? How does a manager know? And to that, I would always say you have to experiment to find out.
I see.
You have to see how much information is too much information for a particular person in a particular context. You don't know. Sometimes people want more information, sometimes they want less information. Different people are different. And there's a quote that I love to use in class from a guy called Jim Monzi. Every managerial decision is the A wing of an A/B test. So, you have two options, A or B. Which one should I use? And the manager wakes up in the morning, the boss wakes up and says, I think A is going to be better. So they go with A, right? But you don't really know whether A really was better than B. You don't know how much better A is than B. And so if you can run an A/B test, then you will have a better idea. Online, brands run A/B tests all the time. This morning, I saw a tweet on X from a friend of mine who was saying, if you object to experimentation, you should know that you've already had 4 experiments done on you in the last hour that you were online. Okay. Companies are doing this all the time online. Offline and bricks and mortar setting, it's much harder to do and there's much less data. But to me, that makes the value of that information much greater. And therefore, managers should actually think a little bit more about the value of knowing which item of information is going to be the most decisive, it's going to have the most weight in a consumer's mind, or at least what are the probabilities?
Oh, great answer. Thank you so much. I mean, in terms of A/B testing, I always do my YouTube promotion in like A/B testing format and testing different titles and lines and pictures. So yeah, that's the way forward, definitely. Thank you so much. And another interesting aspect, I think I really love that you are talking about it in the paper as well, and using this RTD2 in the purchase journey as well, like talking about artificial intelligence and robots, right? So how do you think so? Because you mentioned that they can be considered as others, like, they can be considered maybe social others in the journey as well. So how do you feel about the future of this AI or humanoid robots as social others in our journey, customer purchase journey? How do you see them?
Well, how do I see them or how do I feel about them? These are different
In the
things.
future, let's say, like how the envision of their contribution in this social journey.
I think the contribution is going to be immense, massive. I personally am not, an early adopter in technology. I've never been, but I have friends who are. I don't have an Alexa or Siri in my house, but I have friends and family members who do. And if you go to their house, it's not only Alexa, can you set an alarm for 2 minutes, but it's also Alexa, play some nice music. What is nice music, right? It depends on different people. It depends on different times of day and things like that. Now, in a household that has 4 people, different people have an idea of what is nice music. I mean, my kids and I fight about it all the time. But you also want to listen to different types of music at different times of the day. How good is AI today at knowing who is asking for the nice music, what time of day it is, and what sort of mood they are in? Today, I would say, on a scale of 0 to 100, supposing we put them at 50, well, tomorrow, definitely they'll be better than 50, right? Will they get to 100? I don't know. Will it be foolproof? Maybe, maybe not. What's happening today is because they're not at 100, because they're at 50, that means they're inaccurate, right? So large language models like ChatGPT, you hear a lot about, sometimes they make up information, they make up data, right? When Alexa makes up music for you to play, it's not a question of accurate or inaccurate, but it's a question of how close it is to what you would want at that point in time. You could have spent, 5 minutes or 10 minutes trying to figure out what music you want to listen to, and you play that. Sometimes you take 5 seconds, but Alexa is doing it immediately for you. Because of that, sometimes Alexa is getting it right, sometimes not so right. But over time, what happens is if you don't give feedback, which very often we don't say, this is not nice music, then they tend to assume that the choice was okay. And these choices become self-reinforcing. And what happens, which I realized with a big surprise a few days ago on Spotify, is there were some couple of artists and a couple of albums who I used to love to listen to in the 1990s, which I hadn't heard for 15 or 20 years. And I suddenly realized it's because they're not on my rotation anymore. And so Spotify does not even know I like them.
I recognize that.
Right? So yes, I think the progress of these artificial agents in terms of helping us make decisions, giving us information, that's only going to increase. Is the quality of the decision going to improve? Yes, but I think there's a limit on that as well. Because they, just like a different person can never be you, your significant other may understand you perfectly, but will never be able to perfectly predict what you want to eat today or what song you want to listen to. I think artificial intelligence also won't be able to do that. But there is a difference between effectiveness of decision making and efficiency of decision making. And the AI is going to so dramatically help us increase the efficiency of decision making.
No, yeah, I think that again, like very enlightening answer actually. Also, like when I think about it, sometimes with the help of AI and robots, because we like to talk in like a retail setting, we like to talk some like sales advisors to get more information, but they are not available sometimes, right? So having this type of maybe like humanoid robots in retail settings, or having like different large language models available somewhere that we can talk to, will definitely improve the overall experience, like, and they will act as social companions in the journey. Yeah, I mean, future, let's see what future holds for us as customers. And going on to my next question regarding how can brands learn about their like improving their product designs or marketing strategies by monitoring the social sharing, social information sharing. Do you see any potential for brands on that side as well in terms of their product designs and marketing strategies?
Oh, absolutely. I think not just AI, but with the entire opening up of the social listening sphere, there's a huge amount of potential. Because earlier, I mean, 30 years ago, if a brand wanted to find out something about how consumers think about it, it would have to conduct research. And even the best research is very stylized. It'll give you information, but it'll only give you the sort of information that you're looking for. But with the sort of social listening that's available, this is much less stylized. So you can get a lot more information. The problem is there's a twofold, actually. We talk a lot about big data, right? But if big data was really informative, then brands would already have improved beyond belief, right? Because everybody has access to big data now. But what's going on? The thing is, data needs a transformation. You have to transform data to make it information. Data needs to be transformed to become information. Information needs to be transformed to become knowledge. Knowledge needs to be transformed to become wisdom. And wisdom needs to be transformed to give insight. So it's not a linear, step, not a single step, and it's not linear from data to insight. What brands really want is insight. What they're getting is just tons and tons and tons of data. And just like consumers are being swamped with an overload of data, brands are also being swamped by an overload of data, when what they really want is insight. And the issue, again, here is there's too much data because there are people out there who are providing data. The social influencers are just out there and they're pumping out words. I don't want to say noise. They're just pumping out words. It is the brand's problem to find out which of those words are actually useful to them. Because if you're looking at the volume of data, 80%, 90% of the data coming from 15, 20% of the creators, but these people may not be the ones who the brand wants to reach. Right? They may be amplifying possibly the people that the brands want to reach, but they may also be trying to guide and influence the people that the brand wants to reach. And as a brand, you don't really know that. So just because some particular sentiment has a greater volume and more repetition online doesn't necessarily mean it is more authentic. So this is actually a trap. It's not just about data not being information. It's about data being uninformative. And so as we write in the paper, brands have to be very careful, because if you think about it from a person's point of view, they use certain information to come to a decision. But whether that information that they use to come to their decision is the information they're sharing online, or whether the information they're sharing online is just something that they want to share that makes them look good or some other motivation. These could be two very different things, right? And so again, you need a lot of care and sensitivity to get that customer insight, even though there's a lot more data available these days.
So it's not the size of the data then, right? So
it's not the size of the data that matters.
Exactly. Cool, thank you. And my final question, because like I said, like we can keep talking about this paper on and on all the time, so I'm gonna leave it to our viewers to read it thoroughly. But my last question would be again like regarding the brands, and you already mentioned about social like influencers, right? So we have like tons of influencers right now, and they kind of guide or kind of influence customers' decision, right? So purchase decisions. So how should brands most effectively use the social influencers throughout the social customer journey?
I think, this kind of leads on from my previous answer, which is brands probably need to be careful about this because people have what is called persuasion knowledge. People know when a marketer is trying to influence them. And people have defenses against persuasion knowledge. They have barriers, very, very quick to raise barriers to it. And so if brands are going to leverage these influencers, it's probably going to be about as effective as brands trying to do traditional advertising today. I used to live in Hong Kong, and in East Asia, there's this huge thing about KOL, key opinion leaders. Everybody wants to target the same key opinion leaders. But then consumers know that these key opinion leaders are getting paid by the brands. And so they follow the key opinion leaders because it's very entertaining. But the extent to which the key opinion leaders actually lead their opinions and actually influence their purchases is, I think, very debatable. And I don't know of any good research on that, actually.
I see. Yeah, so it's actually tricky for the brands as well, right? So they go with the volume again. Oh, this person is really famous right now, right? But all the other brands are going for the same people, influencers, and hence the impact is actually shrinking, right? So it's not that impact that they can get. And yeah, I mean, if just final summary question, that was really enjoyable for me. So if we just maybe like recommend a few things based on your paper to brands or like marketeers out there, so what would be the highlight for you?
I think the highlight, just off the top of my head, is for any marketer, there's two things to think about. One is your prospect. What stage of their decision journey are they at? That's one. And two, who is with them? Who are they looking to? Who is their companion on this journey? Who's their traveling companion? For high value decisions, I know that, brands do this a lot. If you're looking to buy a house, the estate agent knows which stage of the process you're in and also knows who you're talking to and who's influencing your decisions. For lower value purchases, this is obviously going to happen less. But just because it happens less, it meaning the seller, the marketer, is less likely to track you, the customer, at this granularity. Just because that is less likely to happen doesn't make it less consequential, doesn't make it less important.
Again, thank you so much for your time. I hope everyone enjoyed this. I really enjoyed this discussion and hope to see you in other videos. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yusuf. Thank you. I really enjoyed this. Everybody, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Tell your friends. Be on the social journey with Yusuf. See you. Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.